Hi all, welcome to the spring graduate student panel hosted by the S.T.A.R.T team. We're very excited and want to thank our student panel and our attendees for coming. For everyone's reference, we have made the transcript and the closed captioning features available for anyone who wants to follow along. So you can turn those on by clicking on the More tab with the three dots at the bottom of your screen. And we will also be recording the event, which we will provide a reference to in your emails by the end of this week. And now I will be turning it over to Ashley, who will be introducing our organizers.
Beautiful, thank you. We have a great group of folks here, so we just want to kind of point you to a couple names just in case any questions come up tonight. That way you can send a chat to any of these people. I'm Ashley. I am the president of S.T.A.R.T. I am a second-year senior at UCSC. I am studying linguistics, cognitive science, and minoring in education. Outside of S.T.A.R.T, believe it or not, I do things outside of S.T.A.R.T sometimes, but I am a research assistant in the SLAB lab in the linguistics department, where I work with a graduate student, a faculty member, and then I conduct some research of my own. That's me. I just want to mention super quickly that if you do have any questions, if you kind of highlight over the participants tab, you can see the S.T.A.R.T organizers. We have S.T.A.R.T in our name, so if any questions come up, please don't hesitate to send us a message. And I will turn it over to Ariella.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Ariella Angelini Stewart. I am the Vice President of S.T.A.R.T. I am a double major here at UCSC, Neuro and Chem, Focused Biochem. If you have any questions about doing that, let me know. I also conduct research in the Chen Lab on campus. We study transcription factors in the brain. I will now pass it on to Arushi.
Hi again, my name is Arushi Pandey, and I'm a first-year undergrad at Santa Cruz. I am particularly interested in the intersectionality of tech, patient services, and social impact, and I kind of explored that through some research, specifically in diabetes, immunology, and transplantation, and hope to continue that on campus. And I will be turning it over to Mateo.
Hey everyone, my name is Mateo. I'm a sophomore currently, going to be a rising junior as of next year. I'm studying biomolecular engineering. Currently, I'm not involved with any research on campus, but hopefully starting next fall I will be. And with that, I will pass it on to Malia.
Hi everyone, it's great to have you here. My name is Malia Starita and I'm a graduating senior. My major is in intensive psychology and I have two minors, one in literature and one in linguistics. I have worked in both a psychology and a linguistics lab, and I'm very interested in the intersection between the two, psycholinguistics. And I hope to see more of it in my graduate career as I am going to law school. Very kind of unconventional, but I'm very excited. So I'll, whoever's next, take it away. Oh wait, that is me. So for the agenda today, we've started at 5 with our welcome and introductions. The panel will begin at 5:15, go roughly till 5:50, and then we'll have our little closing time from 5:50 to 6 p.m. And now to meet our panel. Nazarene, if you could please give like a brief introduction of yourself and introduce yourself to the undergraduates.
Hi, I'm Nazarene. I am a third-year PhD candidate in the biological anthropology department at UC Santa Cruz. I'm part of UCSC paleogenomics, and I do ancient DNA research that focuses on ancient human pathogens. More specifically, I am researching the impact of colonialism. So when the Spanish came to South America, the diseases that they brought, how those diseases changed over time, and how those diseases impacted the indigenous population.
Thank you. Amy, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Amy. the photos on the thing are kind of switched, just in case you guys are wondering, oh, that doesn't look like Amy. But hi, everyone. I'm in the Ecology and Evolutionary Biology department. I'm a first-year grad student. I'm studying bat pollination in cactus in Baja California. And I'm still trying to figure things out. I'm actually going to go out to the field in this Sunday. So I'm very excited to just get to know my system and get to know more about my cactus and the bats that I'm going to be studying.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Jesse, if you could introduce yourself, that would be wonderful.
So yeah, I got switched with Amy. I love hearing about other people's research. I never get to hear about stuff outside of my field. So I'm in molecular cell developmental biology. I'm in the Center for RNA, what are we called? Center for Molecular Study of RNA, something like that. I work on a process called splicing. And so there's a little machine inside of all of your cells, and I am studying how it works, and I'm trying to understand what it does and what it wants to do. I had a very atypical path to get here. I started my undergrad when I was 30. So, you know, there's a lot of different ways to get where you're going. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Allison, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hey everybody, I'm Allison. I'm a 5th year graduate student in the chemistry department. I'm in Seth Rubin's lab, and the lab as a whole studies the regulation of the cell cycle. So how healthy or cancerous cells end up growing and dividing. My project is a slight deviation from what our lab normally does, and in that it's more of a design development related project. And so instead of really trying to research some fundamental properties of the cell cycle, I'm actually trying to develop a potential cancer therapeutic. Like Jesse, I also had a pretty non-traditional, very side-windy, scenic route along my path, and it's worked out well for me. If there's any take-home message that I would really like to impart on people today, it's to not be discouraged by deviations to what you think your plan should be. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to get somewhere in life, and it might not be where you think it should be. So, yeah.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Allison. And then last but not least, Philip, could you introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, I'm Phil. I'm a 2nd year philosophy PhD student. Well, obviously in the Department of Philosophy. And yeah, I'm just about done with all of my coursework. So yeah, my graduate career is going to get a little bit more research intense starting next year when I will be getting ready for my qual exams. Currently, I'm mostly interested in questions around epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, and moral psychology, which is the study of, well, morality and how we go about making moral decisions. I'm kind of working on 2 main projects. One of them is like the value of fiction to our moral decision making, and another project that keeps changing, but it has to do primarily with the processes that go around with making moral decisions as pertaining to like emotions that are involved in making those kind of choices. Yeah, my pathway to grad school was, I think, pretty traditional. After high school, I just decided to go to college, and during my first 2 years as a philosophy major, I was hooked on the discipline, so I just decided that's what I want to do. Yeah. So thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you all here, and we really look forward to hearing all about just more about you guys. So I believe I'll be handing it over to Mateo, and we will begin the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. So how it's going to work is before we go into specific like persons, people asking questions that are currently in the call, we're going to start with a baseline or a set of series questions, which we call our guided questions. And it's just going to be 10 quick, easy questions for you guys to answer. And the way it's going to work is I'm going to ask the question. It's going to be posted in the chat in case you guys need to reference it again. And you guys will go and answer in the order that we introduced you in. So we'll start with Nazreen and end with Phil. And yeah, so also another thing to go along with this, if there's a question which you don't currently have an answer for, or you simply don't want to answer, you're more than welcome to say pass, and we can go on head on to the next person. So no pressure. This is very open, inviting environment. So yeah, we'll start with the first question. What is something that led you to pursuing research within your field? And when did you know it was something that you wanted to do?
So for me, it was, this is going to sound really silly, but when I was 11 years old, I watched a National Geographic children's video about a bunch of aliens that were like exploring like mysteries of the ancient world and like, oh, like how did the pyramids get built? And it wasn't anything like ancient aliens. Like it was very clear, like humans built this, and it's amazing that like, you know, like, oh, look at all these amazing archaeological sites. So that for me, like really cemented a love of archaeology for me. But my dad was very against me only going into archaeology. So to kind of make things easier, I was like, okay, I'll also do something in relation to biology. And so when I was at community college, I did like just general biology, and then I transferred to a 4-year. And at first I was like environmental science, but then I realized I really am not interested in policy. And so I was like, well, microbiology, that sounds fun. And so like microbiology and genetics kind of, and archaeology, like all together kind of ended up merging into this like really niche kind of area of study that I've fallen in love with it, obviously, because I've decided to dedicate how many years of my life to this now. But yeah, like I'd say like the professors that I had that encouraged like me to continue like going into research and stuff like that really, I'd say were like a huge impact on like my ability to like stay focused and to keep going even when I felt like, oh, I don't know whether like I really belong here, or like thoughts like that, which I think at some point we all have, like regardless of you know, like who you are, but like some people have them more often than others because of things like gender bias, or like, you know, like racial bias and things like that, where like you don't necessarily feel as welcome. So like I have to say like those professors that like really pushed me to keep going were a huge impact. Sorry, that was a long answer.
That's all right. That's perfectly fine. Amy?
Yeah, for sure. It was actually really funny because when I was first young, my mom would tell me, oh, like you should be a researcher. You should work in a lab, you know, study diseases. And I was like, oh, like, no, I don't want to just, you know, go in a lab. I didn't realize like that research has so much more than just like sitting in a lab. Like it's like thinking critically about different questions, and like it's also going to the field to collect samples or talking to people and stuff like that. And so when I was an undergrad, I joined a plant research lab, and my professor was Mexican. And she showed me how I could integrate part of my culture into my research by, you know, teaching other people about plants in Spanish and going to Mexico and presenting to others. And I think that's when I fell in love, because I realized that I could do research in the field and I could meet all these people and just like get all these different points of views and still be true to who I am and not feel like I had to change, you know, as a scientist. So that's what kind of like how I knew that this was for me.
Awesome, awesome, right on. And I think it was Jesse next, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure what part of the story to tell. Okay, so I went to community college for 10 years. And I was just studying all kinds of different things. I took a lot of art classes. I took a lot of writing classes. And part of it was that I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to maybe become an animator. And I was also taking all these other things, you know, like a birding class, I don't know, Spanish, whatever, you know, just things that I was interested in learning. And so over time, I was taking more and more science classes. And part of this was because, no offense to Phil, but I had taken some very frustrating philosophy classes where basically, you know, I was told, okay, here is this little list of dead white men who have had interesting thoughts about life. Once you learn about that, you're going to know about life. And I was like, who the fuck are these guys? They don't know anything about my life. They don't know. I mean, they never had a cell phone. They never had a period. Like, I don't care what they think. And so I was trying to get more like, what have people thought in the world? And eventually I was like, you know what, this is all very compromised. If you want to know about life, ask life. And so I was just taking more and more science classes. And so I was learning all these beautiful lessons about life from taking, I remember I took this physics class and the teacher was saying, okay, you know, here's these equations about gravity. And he was like, so look at this factor here. This is the gravitational force between two objects and it can't go to zero. So no matter how far away something is in the universe, it's pulling on you. It feels you and it's pulling on you and you're pulling towards it. And I was like, why is no one else crying in this classroom? Like, that is the most beautiful fucking thing I've ever heard. I was like, you know, getting up, yes, say it again, speak on it. I don't know, I was so blown away. And, you know, it was so exciting to feel like I could get at some truths in the world. And then, you know, and then I find out that there's this secret language that all of Earth life forms speak of genetic code, and that I could learn it and I could learn to write in it. And I was like, well, fuck everything else I was doing. Like, this is the thing. So yeah, that's my short version.
Very, very interesting backstory. I love it. I believe next we had Allison.
Yeah. I also kind of contemplated, you know, which part of my background I should tell, and I'm just gonna tell the truth, which is like, I never really thought I would even go to college. I never thought I would go into research. I was always well, you know, boosted by people around me. My parents were always super encouraging, like, you can do whatever you want. But I just honestly, like, I was interested in too many things. It was like overwhelming to just pick something and do. And so I actually, I'll skip most of my life and just jump to, I didn't graduate high school. Technically, I tested out. I took the proficiency exam, which in the state of California is honored as having done high school, but nowhere else in the world is that honored. And I did that because I needed to work at the time. And so at 15, I was just working. When I was 17, I started volunteering at the fire department. And I thought, this is sweet. So maybe I'll be a firefighter. So I was doing community college, taking classes to be an EMT. Realized that the places that I wanted to live at the time were actually very difficult to find paid positions. Being a firefighter, most of them are volunteer based. So unless the chief or the captain dies or retires, like, there's nothing. So at about that time, I was working at a coffee shop, and one of my customers was actually a crime scene investigator for our sheriff's department. And we had just been talking and told her my interests. And so she invited me to intern with the sheriff's department. And so I was doing that. at about the time I realized that the firefighting thing wasn't going to work out. So I kind of switched up my classes. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to get an associate's and I'm going to double major. I'm going to double associates it up with psychology and criminal justice. And then I'm going to go through FBI Academy and work for the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crimes. And I had just these lofty goals. And I ended up suffering a work-related injury, busted my shoulder, at the time somewhat permanently. And so FBI Academy was out. I wasn't going to really be able to do that. And so I had to kind of change things up again. And one of the last classes I was taking for my psychology associates was psychobiology, which is really just neurobiology with an emphasis on mental illness. And that was just the science, and that was so exciting. And so obviously the next logical jump was that now I need to become a neurosurgeon. So when I eventually transferred I went to UCSC for my undergrad. So when I transferred, it was really with it in mind that I was going to go to medical school. And during my courses and interactions with folks, I really just started getting the feeling that a clinical or like medical setting wasn't quite right for me. But what was right for me was how freaking cool science was and everything I was learning. And I like poking stuff with sticks, and I like just looking around the world and trying to make sense of it. And so that's what really got me here eventually. I reached out to some professors, got into undergraduate research, and it just sort of went from there.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you.
Damn, I've known Allison for years and I never heard any of that shit. That's so cool. That's so cool.
The more you know. I think the last in line is Phil. So we will go to Phil.
So, I mean, as far as I can remember, I always had like an interest in art, literature, those kinds of things that kind of have to do with values. Um, so, so actually, before going to college, I spent my whole life in Poland. And in Poland, when you go to high school, you kind of have to pick 3 high schools you want to go to and you apply to them. And I heard that one of the high schools in the neighboring town had required philosophy classes, and I had no fucking clue what philosophy is at the time, but I felt like it was something important. So that's the high school I kind of picked, and that's where I went. And the first week of classes, I had my first philosophy class and met the instructor who's like the weirdest dude I've ever met in my life. But you know, it was fun. He was different than other teachers, so you know, he was a charismatic dude, and he invited me to like his philosophy club that he had for students, which I joined, and that's kind of how my interest for philosophy was sparked. In the meantime, I was kind of interested in a bunch of different things. For some dumbass reason, I really wanted to be an actor. So I told my mom that I'm gonna go to the Polish Theater Academy, and she nearly had an aneurysm. She was not happy. So after a while, I changed my mind, decided I'm gonna do philosophy, which was slightly better, but not really. And I also got the brilliant idea to go to college in the US. Don't ask me why, but you know, that's just what I did. I Googled colleges in Oregon, picked one, and just gonna go there. So yeah, I still had the bug after reading some texts in high school, so I majored in philosophy. And the more I kept reading and as people say, thinking about shit, I just kind of knew that's what I want to keep doing. So by my senior year, I definitely knew I want to apply to grad school. Yeah, at first I just wanted to apply to master's programs because I didn't think I can get into a PhD program. So yeah, here is my first piece of advice for you. Apply for stuff you don't think you're gonna get, because just on a whim, I decided to apply to Santa Cruz, and by some miracle, somebody decided they wanted me in that department. And here I am. So that's my story in a nutshell of how I ended up in a PhD program in philosophy, of all things.
All right. Well, great responses from all of you. It's really interesting to hear a lot more about your guys' backgrounds and mainly what originated your interest for what you study now. Um, the next question we're going to move on to is going to be, have any of you worked in various research fields? Disregarding the one you're currently in, have you worked in other ones? And if you did so, what was your favorite thing about them? And
Yes.
I guess, yeah,
Oh.
we'll go with Nazreen. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've worked in a lot of different areas of research. So like as I said, like I kind of started out in archaeology. So I was doing a lot of lithics analysis. So like looking at rocks under microscopes, like day in, day out. So I did that for a while. I went on an archaeological dig in Belize. I worked for the Forest Service in Montana, working in their National Genomics Center, doing like wildlife genomics stuff, which I mean is kind of, I guess, similar, but it's the mechanism of like the things. So like it's all like microsatellites that they were using, whereas like now it's mostly like next generation sequencing for like those of you who are familiar. But so that was interesting. And then that was when, after the Forest Service, I ended up working at Harvard Medical School in an ancient DNA lab, where I was like, finally, like, okay, finally, I'm like doing the stuff I want to do. But I'm sorry, what was the second? Oh, so what did I enjoy about this? So I'd say I really, really enjoyed working at the Forest Service because they did so much non-invasive sampling. So with a lot of like genetics, you have to like take like a muscle sample or like a skin, you know, like some like very invasive sample, like they'll clip like part of a wing or something like that to be able to get genetic information from it. But the Forest Service is like really invested in doing non-invasive stuff. So like from feathers or poop, or they even had like when I was there, like they were really invested in their environmental DNA program. So they were taking samples from streams or dirt, you know, and getting trace DNA from all of these things to kind of evaluate like the health of different species in the regions that we were studying. Which, and that in itself, all of that research factored into actual policy that was being made about like whether or not a species ends up making it onto the endangered species list. So like it was really cool to like have like a very clear impact, like a concrete thing that was like the product of everything that you were doing.
Right on. And then I think it was Amy.
Yeah, I also worked in a variety of different research labs. The first research lab that I worked in as an undergrad was actually a rattlesnake research lab, where I was kind of like testing their vision and like seeing how well they were able to see thermal contrasts. And I really liked that lab because we got to like handle the snakes, which was really scary at first, but then it was like, oh, like I'm so badass, like these don't scare me no more. Like I really like that. The only thing about that lab, like the reason I switched to another lab was because it was a lot of like just being inside, and I was like, oh, like I don't want to be in a lab, I want to go outside and like catch real rattlesnakes, you know. So I ended up switching to a marine lab. And the marine lab was cool, but then I realized I don't like being cold and wet. So then I switched again to another research lab. And I think that's also like one of my biggest pieces of advice is like, honestly, try anything that you're interested in. And if you realize like, I like that or I don't like that, like that's awesome. Like that will get you to where you want to be. But anyway, so yeah, I ended up switching again. And that's when I landed my plant lab. And I fell in love with that lab once we got to do field work. Because there was like, you know, there was these huge pine trees and we were trying to get these pine cones off of them. And so we had to get like these softball sized rocks and just like throw them at the pine cones. And we're just like trying to catch all these plant data. And like, I don't know, it was just a lot of like hands-on stuff. And that's what I enjoyed the most from that research lab.
I think it's my turn, but can all of the audience people, can you put like what your major is in the chat? Like what department are you in? And if you were going to go to grad school, what would you be going for? Because I don't know what y'all are. Okay, I see computer science and math, bioinformatics and marine bio, biomedical engineering, molecular, Spanish studies and language studies, history and sociology. Okay, cool. I think there might be one more, but I think that's it. Okay, cool. Thank you. So what did I do? So I got into research. Okay, so during my long community college, I started taking a bunch of ecology classes. And then they were super cool. I really liked it. You know, get to go out and learn all the birds and animals and stuff. I felt like a witch. I love it. But I took a couple, okay. Okay. We have at least one person doing some research already. That's good. I took this field studies class where we went down to Mexico with this professor, and I kind of heard some stuff about him before, but in the field, he was creepy. He was weird. And taking the rest of the classes in the series, which I had been planning to take them, meant more and more like camping next to this guy in the woods. And I was like, you know, I don't want to. I just don't want to. And so I at that point I was like either biology or animating, and I had basically decided biology, but then I didn't want to do field studies, at least not there. So I wound up getting into a molecular lab when I went to university because they're doing DNA, and like I said, it's amazing, secrets of the universe, whatever. So the first research that I did, my professor would have never, she knows better than to do this now, but she told me you can study whatever you want. Anything we can do in worms, if you can dream up the experiment, we will do it. And what an incredible gift that was. And that was so much extra work for her. And that's crazy. Nobody does that. Don't expect that. It was only because she was new. She didn't know any better. But I wound up designing a genetic experiment around my youngest sister's genetic condition. So my youngest sister, Kamiko, has a debilitating disorder. And I was like, can we study that in worms? And so we did that. No. But, you know, that's how it is in science. You get your answer. Sometimes it's not what you wanted. And so I did, you know, some other molecular studies, and it was interesting, but I was really interested in kind of cognitive neuroscience. I hadn't really, you know, at that point I was like, if I'm not going to study animals, I'd like to study brains. I would like to study, you know, how does this meat thing make all these choices? And so I got into a, you know, kind of going off of what Nazreen said, like you have to try different things to see what you want to do. So for my master's, I was working in mouse brains, and it turns out I can't kill mice, or I'm dry heaving in the parking lot all day. And so you just got to know that about yourself. You know, I thought maybe I was tough and cool, and I'm not. So I cannot work with animals that have faces on them. So, and I had really been thinking of going in that direction, and it was like, no, that's not going to work. So that's why I came back to little small invisible things for my PhD.
All right, right on. And then Allison, what's next?
I mean, aside from the in the Department of Summit Sciences. I got to do the like blue changes and whatnot.
I believe
Oh,
your
am I?
mic might be
Yeah, I can
muffled
hear
a
you.
little bit.
Oh no, can you hear me
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. I mean the internship at the sheriff's department was a little sciencey-ish in that like I got to do the glue chamber like fingerprint stuff and that sort of thing. But the experience actually that I think was more, I guess, it was actually probably the hardest time of my educational career just because my professor was a pretty challenging and demanding guy, but it was also rewarding. And so what I was doing in my undergraduate research was actually more bioinformatics, computer science based. And so it was still biochemistry, but what we were doing is, if anyone's aware of the Rosetta modeling suite, I helped develop a module for that that was integrating nuclear magnetic resonance data with protein structure, protein fold prediction. And what I loved about, aside from having a rough time as an undergraduate in that lab, um, I really did love the fact that I could do research from anywhere, or research, I could do my development on that anywhere, and there was a pause button. I can be writing code and just be like going to bed, close the laptop, done. Working with living things now, it's like there is no pause button. Like once you've started doing something, like you're in it, and you could be in it for a whole week without getting to press pause unless you just want to trash whatever whatever you're doing. And you have to be there. Um, so I really did enjoy the ability to just stop whenever, do it wherever. Bioinformatics is a pretty, I think, great and probably a very rewarding financially path for folks that want to get into that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, very nice. Thank you. And then last but not least, we got Phil.
Oh, in this case, least, because I don't have anything to contribute since I stuck to philosophy the whole time.
Oh, okay then. Well, in that case, we're gonna move on to one more question because we are starting to, time is starting to slowly run out. I'm gonna kind of mush these two questions together, but essentially the main point of it being centered around undergraduate research. What it is for you guys, what is one piece of advice regarding undergraduate research that you wish you had known before going into it? And after getting involved with research, what skills have you gained from it? And then we can switch up the order this time. So we can go reverse order if you would like to start, Phil.
Yeah, sure. Can somebody like type the question just for reference? That would be helpful.
Yeah, I just put
Abby
them
had
in the
like
chat
4
for you.
people to think on it, and then he was first.
Yeah, sorry. We can always, if you need more time, we can go back to the regular order. It is up to you.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
So the question is, what advice we have for getting involved in undergrad, and what skills do we get from research? Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, first piece of advice is going to be like, if you have an opportunity, just do it. Like I, as an undergrad, did not take advantage of nearly as many research opportunities as I could. And I think that would really help me later on in grad school, because it would help me kind of sharpen in the focus that I had, as opposed to like figuring out in your first year kind of what you want to focus on. So that's my one piece of advice. Skills that I gained from conducting research. So I think there are kind of two categories of skills when it comes to philosophy. Those that are philosophy specific and those that you can take out of philosophy. And I think one of main kind of virtues of studying philosophy, whether that be through research or just like engaging with the text and with various texts and with the discipline as a whole, is that it really teaches you critical thinking skills that are exportable to whatever it is that you do. Um, Critical thinking and this kind of ability to identify what are right questions to be asking, I think is something that philosophy offers to anybody willing to engage with it. Um, one philosopher has said that like the role of philosophy on like this forum of science is to like find what are the right questions and the questions that we should be asking, and rest is up to scientists. I don't know if he's right or not about the whole thing, but but definitely about this skill of asking questions. Um, yeah, another big thing that studying philosophy has taught me that is, I think, very useful outside of academia is that things are very rarely as simple as they seem. There is very rarely, a very easy path to figuring out what is the right thing to think or to do. Um, yeah, those are like my biggest takeaways from my research so far.
Awesome. And then we'll go on to Allison.
Yeah, I think I would actually like to spend my time only addressing the first question, but because I have a few things that I want to say there.
No,
Um,
it's totally free range. It's up to you.
cool. The first is that don't be scared to reach out to professors. They're very much just humans. And it took me a while to reach out because I was so intimidated and I felt like I had to be this perfect undergraduate. And, like thought that I had to read their papers and know like everything about their lab and come off as just super smart so that they would want me in their lab. And the reality is like white papers, their papers are probably ridiculously hard to read for an undergraduate. Like, don't put that on yourselves. Like, no one is expecting you to be reading papers. They just expect you to be familiar with what the lab does generally. It's their job to help mentor you and teach you in more detail what they do. And at least on our campus at UCSC, and I guess I can really only speak to my department and kind of auxiliary departments, but most of the professors are very approachable and super nice and love talking to students. So don't be shy, just reach out. And beyond that, when you do get in a lab, um, you know, if you've come that far, you're smart and you're capable. And if somebody is making you feel like you're not adequate or competent, they're just being a jerk. As much as it's your job as an undergraduate to try and do your best and learn, try to learn and ask questions, it's the job of the professor or whoever your mentor is, a grad student or a postdoc. It's their job to be a good mentor, and learning goes both ways. So if you're not understanding something, it's not because you're stupid. It's because something's not come across, and it's the job of your mentor to explain things well to you. It's not your job to like spend all night trying to figure out something that you don't understand and you're too scared to ask. Ask all the questions, and asking actually makes you look good. I've worked with 3 undergrads now, and it really is just the undergrad I'm working with now. Anytime we have like a little chat to answer some questions, it ends up taking 2 hours, and I love every minute of it because she's just so not afraid to ask questions. So yeah, have some confidence. Like, you've worked hard to get where you are now, and you're totally capable. Don't let people make you feel otherwise. And if the lab is making you feel that way, there's other labs to try. Don't be afraid to go around. That's my bit.
That was a great bit.
Yeah, damn,
Thank
I
you for
really
that.
agree with all that. I mean, I think that that's probably like the heart of it. Like, it's their job to help you, and at least in my department, you know, if someone wants to go work in industry and be a scientist there, you can make 3 times as much money. So all of these professors, it's worth, you know, $80,000 a year to them to be a mentor. Like, it's not just that they have to, that they want to, that this is really important to them. And, you know, just, and that's all across disciplines. These are people who chose this path, and it's literally in their job description. So, you know, one of the really nice things about taking as weird a path as I did is that when I got to university, I knew I wanted to be there, and I wasn't shy to be like, hi, do you have like 15 minutes to just like chat with me about something? And I do this all the time. I'm always finding mentors. Anything I want to know about, I am looking into it, and I'm just like knocking on doors, sending emails like, hey. And actually, this is kind of true before. Like, I wanted to start a punk band, and I'm like, hey, you're in a punk band. Tell me, what do I got to know? What do I got to do? You're a drummer now. You know, like whatever. Like, if you want to do something, find someone who's doing it and get them to mentor you. And now, as I'm getting close to the end of my PhD, I'm going to professors and saying, do you have some time in the next couple of weeks to just talk to me about what being a professor is like? What is that, you know, what's the job search like? What's the hardest and easiest stuff? And they're down, you know, they sit and they tell you about it. Because the thing is, nobody can go back and change what they did. Everybody has, you know, there's stuff I want to go tell 16-year-old Jesse, and I can't. It's not an option, right? But I can tell somebody else. And so when you go ahead and you present yourself as a mentee, it means that all of their struggles were worth something because they get to help somebody. So it's, you're helping them by presenting yourself as a mentee. And even coming to stuff like this, I mean, you have a whole bunch of classmates who could benefit from this information but didn't show up. So if you're showing up for stuff, you're the person who's getting that information. And there's I don't want to say infinite, but there's a lot of that to be had if you show up and if you ask questions. And I agree with Allison about don't feel, I well, actually everything that was said. But you know, don't feel discouraged that you don't know what's going on, because of course you don't know what's going on. It's hard. Science is hard. Research is hard. I mean, look at all your majors. Like, you're gonna like learn, you're gonna like delve into like a language. Those things, languages are old. They take so long to develop. Like, come on, that stuff's hard. Anyway, so yeah, give yourself that time. And I think it's really helpful if you look into like a growth mindset versus fixed mindset. I hope that concept is being taught more. That it's super real. You're not born smart. It's developed. And I remember my first lab meeting when I got to UCLA in this elite neuroscience lab. They talked for 2 hours, and I swear I didn't understand a single fucking noun they said the entire time. And I just had this pad of paper next to me, and I'm just like, just like trying to keep the panic off my face and just writing down every single word. And it's true, you know, like Allison said, it's their job to help you. But then I also had to put in a lot of time myself, you know, like on Wikipedia, what the fuck are they talking about? And then eventually I could read review articles. It's like, okay, good, you know, and then eventually I could read primary literature. But it takes time. And if it's fun for you, then you should do it. And if you can think of something more fun to do, then do that thing that's more fun. Because grad school's hard, And it's hard to do it if you don't really want to be there, or you're not sure, or you're just doing it to impress somebody else or something like that. Do it because it's just going to bug the shit out of you if you don't. Yeah.
Right on. Right on. Great words of encouragement there. Really appreciate that. I think it was Amy going back.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to shift the conversation also now to talking about grades. When I first went into undergrad, I was a first generation college student, so I had no idea what the heck I was even doing. I took all these really hard classes and I ended up like failing, I think, half of my classes. And I was like, all right, I have to drop out now, like this is bad. And I had a really low GPA. But despite that, like I'm in grad school, and like I've known grad students who've had like lower than 3.0s and they've still gone to grad school. So I want you all to just don't put yourself down just because like you don't have the best grades. Cause like honestly, like doing school is hard when you're like working, you have a family, all these different things, and like if you're passionate about research or whatever it is that you're doing, that's what's most important, because you get to also write your personal statement and you'll explain all of those things. So don't ever let those things stop you from applying or, getting those opportunities. And I also wanted to talk about kind of like what Allison was saying, like I in undergrad had so many questions when I was doing research, but I would just go up to the professor and just like blank out, like, oh my God, I don't even know what I'm confused about. So I guess a thing that I would do is like just get like a piece of paper and just like write everything that I'm confused about and just like take my piece of paper and be like, okay, so I'm confused about this, and like just kind of go over the list. And like honestly, professors, like if they really care, they'll like sit with you and like, okay, let me explain everything that you're confused about. And also going back to like how I did a bunch of different research labs, all those PIs, like even though I didn't end up studying in like, rattlesnakes or marine environments, they were still great people to ask for letters of support and things like that. And so just because, you don't end up doing that type of research, like these are still mentors that can be there for you and guide you. And if they really care about you, they won't care that, your research isn't going to be something else, because they just care about you and for you to succeed. So for sure, make sure you have a good support system. And also grad students, like be friends with them. They'll tell you straight up, like, like us, right? We'll tell you straight up everything, like how grad school's like, and how undergrad was. And I think for me, grad students were like who I felt the most comfortable talking to, because sometimes PIs are just too scary for me. But yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to spend my time just really quickly before we end. I have two pieces of advice. The first one is, do not be afraid to speak up to defend yourself. Do not undervalue your time. Like there are a lot of people who unfortunately kind of really take advantage of undergraduates, and kind of like they, if they're like unpaid internships and things like that, like, if people are treating you badly, like you don't need to be doing that. You deserve to be treated like a human being. Like if somebody is being, like if somebody's bullying you, like just get out of that situation. Like it is not worth it. And kind of linking back to something Jesse said earlier, unfortunately, there is a huge problem in fieldwork with people being like creepy or like sexual harassment or even like rape and things like that. And so just really trust your instincts. If you feel uncomfortable about a situation, get yourself out of that situation. Like it is not worth it to be put up with like any form of harassment or mistreatment. On that note, like if you guys have not seen the documentary Picture a Scientist yet, I highly recommend it. Really dives deep into kind of that topic that I just kind of went off on. It specifically focuses on like the struggles that like women and women of color have like endured in science, but I think it is really applicable to like many other underrepresented groups. But the second piece of advice is go to office hours. If you have not gone to office hours to talk to your TAs or your professors, like, just do it. Like, they're there for you to talk to you about things. And like, that is how you network. That is how you build these relationships in order to like get into research, to like get these like really strong letters of recommendation. It's like, you know, if you ask somebody for a letter of recommendation and you haven't said 2 words to them, like, that's not going to be a very good letter of recommendation, you know, like it's going to be a lot better if you actually have like a good professional working relationship with that professor. Yeah, so that was my spiel. Thank you.
Wow. Well, it was really good hearing from all you guys and all the advice. And I think there's a lot of knowledge to be shared and gained from what you guys said, and a lot of, I don't know, I'm kind of left like, don't know what to say, because you kind of just nailed it and mic dropped it almost down there. But yeah, that was really good. That was really, thank you guys for sharing. I know we have like minutes left. I don't know if we want, if you guys still do have time for maybe a few open floor questions from the people here who've been so patiently waiting to ask something that's bugging them in their mind. But yeah, if we do have time, and if you guys do have the time to stay, we'll open it for open discussion. So anyone who's in the call currently can ask any questions, and you can type it or raise your hand. We can call on you.
I'll just vocalize a question that just came through the chat. Someone is asking, are any of you comfortable with us reaching out to you after this event closes out?
Yeah.
I think I see most of everyone nodding. We will be sending an email out tomorrow with the recording, so we can collect these graduate students' emails and we can include it with that as well. And then there's another question. How did you decide what grad programs to apply to and ultimately attend?
I guess I can start with that really quickly. So for me, like, my research is so specific. Like, there are only like 4 or 5 like really good established ancient DNA labs in the United States. And I was like not feeling like going international for grad school, especially because the system is very different. So for me, it was like I luckily had just a couple to choose from. And so for me, it really boiled down to the people that I was going to be working with. And like, for me, like ethics is incredibly important, and kind of like community engagement with descendant groups, for like the like, we take samples from human remains, and so like obviously we want the full collaboration, like not just consultation, but like collaboration with the descendant groups like that are affiliated with those human remains. And so like the advisor that I ended up, like, we had a really, really great conversation about that. And it just really made me feel like, okay, this is the kind of place where like, I feel like I can do that extra work and won't be like pressured to just get things done. Like I can do things right.
Yeah, I can also add to that. Like Masterine, I also looked for programs in the area that I wanted to study. Like, I was very interested in studying in Mexico, so I had to make sure the projects were going to be in Mexico. But the reason, or like the one thing that ultimately made me attend here to UCSC was the interview process. So once you get accepted to grad programs, you do usually an interview process, and then you go to like, you know, the state that the school is in, and then you meet all the, you know, the grad students and the cohort. And I went to other interviews, and like the vibe was just off, to BH. And when I came here to Santa Cruz, I met all these great people, and like the weather was nice and the project was just right. So for me, yeah, it was a lot about like just the community and like how the grad students were like, because you're going to be with these people for like 5 or 6 years, so you have to make sure you're really comfortable in this area, and also the weather. The weather is important, at least for me. I'm from Southern California, so I was not going to go anywhere with snow.
So I didn't mention this before, but I think this would be a good time to do so. When I finished my undergrad, I applied to grad school. I applied to 4 super top elite schools. Everyone was like, oh, you're going to get in. You've got a publication. You've got all this research. You've got good grades, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I did not get into any of them. Womp womp. And I was like, well, what am I going to do now? This is my whole plan. So I went and did that master's literally because I hadn't got into any of the PhD programs and I didn't know what the hell to do with my life. I had been working at a middle school. I'd been working in the Los Angeles public school system for 14 years. And I was like, I cannot do another year of 7th grade. I will lose my fucking mind. And so I went and I did this master's degree. And honestly, I did it because it was paid. I did it because I was able to get paid to do research, which meant I got to quit my job. Not that I didn't love the kids. I love the kids, but the system grinds you down. Anyway, and so when I applied again after my master's degree, I applied to lots and lots of programs. And unlike Amy and Nasreen, I had lots of options. Genetics is studied all over the place. So there was lots of things that I did to narrow it down. When I'm currently looking at a postdoc at Yale, and I was like, wait, why did I decide not to apply at Yale? And then I remembered that I looked at the list of professors, and it's like, again, just a huge bank of old white men. And I have lots of individual old white men that I love, but you get a huge pack of them together, it's suspicious. I don't want, no, thank you. Okay, I don't want to. So I was like, I was looking at what am I getting from that? But in my field, and there's kind of a mix of people's subjects here, we do rotations. So in my field, you don't go, I don't know what project I'm working on. I have to join a department, and then I do, somewhere between 6 and 10 weeks in this lab, and then you go to another lab, and then you go to another lab. It's kind of like a weird professor dating thing almost, in that just you get to try out, like, what's my relationship with this person? What's my relationship? And then at the end, you pick a lab and they pick you, and maybe you send your PI a meme while they're in a faculty meeting to let them know that you chose them. So for me, I had to find a whole bank of people that I liked. And when it really came down to it, it was between here and University of Maryland, College Park, because there was like 2 big clusters, and I was like, I don't know which one. But really, I was like, you know what? There's so many labs that I like at UCSC, and the weather's so nice. So I agree with Amy about that. So I think it was a good choice. Also, the grads just seemed happier. When we went on the interviews, like, they just seemed much more relaxed. They were like, one guy was in a band, another guy was like surfing, and I was like, wait, you have a life outside of lab? I didn't know that was allowed. They don't chain you up at night. So I was like, okay, they're happy, the weather's good, there's cool research, like, I'm in.
Yeah, for me, it was a mix of I wanted to stay on the West Coast. So I basically looked up every PhD program and master's program for philosophy on the West Coast. And then I went through what does each of those programs actually do. And then I just like applied to programs that had faculty working on stuff I was interested in. As it turns out now, I'm doing completely something else than I initially wanted. But yeah, that was my process, and it brought me here.
Yeah, I'll just quickly echo on like the weather front and everything else. Go somewhere, apply to places where you would actually be happy. you know, grad school is long and it's hard enough as it is. You're not going to be successful if you're not happy. So even if you think this one place might be super prestigious, if you're not going to have a good time there, you're not going to do very well. So for me, I was selecting places where I knew that I would be happy, not just the like, you know, location, environment, my perception of the culture there. But then also, like others have said, look, you know, kind of get a feel for, I think a lot of colleges at this point, or universities do, um, you have an opportunity to move around labs. Either they do have like the rotations type system like we have at UCSC for grad students, or at least in our department. Jesse and mine, we have different departments, but they both kind of have the same system. And so just look for groups that you think whose research you would be into. And then also, if you can, try and get a feel, like if you have a chance to go and like do the interviews or whatever, get a feel for the culture of the labs that you think you're interested in. And again, like the happiness of the grad students who are already there, and go from there.
All right. Right on. Well, thank you guys. I think I'm gonna pass it on to Ariella really quick.
Yeah. So before you all head out, we just like to do our little shameless plug. As some of you know, START was actually born from SURU, which is the symposium that we hold each year. It's an annual symposium in the fall, usually like late November, early December. It's a wonderful day full of poster sessions and talks and snacks, all that fun stuff, and lots of really cool discussion. You get to hear about research that's done all over the campus. It's interdisciplinary. So if you're interested in applying or attending, we are actually going to be opening up the application season early this year, and we'll be sending out in our next newsletter. So sign up for our newsletter and we will get that information out to you.
And just a final notes from me before we finish out tonight. We just want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for attending this event. I know it's during dinner time, but we are so thankful that you are all here and to share your expertise and for us to listen to you as an undergraduate who's looking at graduate school. I've learned so much tonight. And for the undergraduates in the audience, if you have any like unresolved questions that you want answered, please feel free to email us. I will send them out to whichever panelist you are interested in getting an answer from, or all of them. We'll make sure that all your questions get answered. And if you want to do some web browsing later on tonight, we also have our website full up and ready, so you can see some of our upcoming things, learn more about what SURU is, what we do as START. We also have an Instagram that is gaining some speed here. So just lots of things, lots of ways to get connected, and we are just so thankful that you all came to join us tonight. And again, the recording of the event tonight will be available as soon as it can get uploaded. Technology takes time, but we will get it as soon as possible. And if you're interested in the slide deck, feel free to send us an email and we can send that out to you as well. I think that's it. So thank you. And if you have any like last minute quick questions, we can keep the Zoom open for a couple of minutes too. That's all. Thank you.